If the Golden State Warriors don't like what the Sacramento Kings are offering in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade, Kings GM Scott Perry is more than willing to just walk away. I got the latest on this mini edition of Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I shared the latest information of what I had heard on this Jonathan Kuminga hunt, I suppose, for the Sacramento Kings. All these sign-and-trade rumors that have been floating around for the better part of a week. Was going back and forth with a lot of people on social media, and I thought, you know what? Why not just address this, lay it all out there, and talk about some things in one place on this kind of bonus mini edition of Locked On Kings. So this will not be our normal length episode with 3 segments or anything like that. This is just going to be me sharing with you the latest that I have heard and what I have reported. Plus, want to address the Kings' willingness and ability to walk away and the Warriors' perspective on that, and why the Sacramento Kings don't have to do anything to sweeten the deal just to help the Warriors out. I'll explain all again in this mini episode. Feel free to leave your thoughts, your comments, any questions that you might have on this YouTube channel in the comment section down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're an audio listener, hit me up at MattGeorgeSac on Twitter or email me mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Here is the latest that I've heard under the Jonathan Kuminga sweepstakes. There were about 48 hours or so where things were pretty quiet, especially during the 4th of July holiday. What I have heard today is that the Kings' offer hasn't really budged. It hasn't really changed. It's still Devin Carter, Dario Saric, and 2 second-round picks. That is the offer that is still on the table. There has been reports and clutch points put out on social media earlier today that the Kings are willing to make Malik Monk available in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade. I do believe that. I think it's been pretty clear that Scott Perry is keeping an eye out on what Malik Monk's options and market is like around the league, and he seems more than willing to move on from Malik Monk. However, like I reported when this whole saga started, the Golden State Warriors still, from all indications, everything that I've been told, and I've been told pretty definitively, the Golden State Warriors do not have interest in Malik Monk. My belief is not just because they have guys like Moses Moody and Buddy Hield in front of them. I think it has to do with Malik Monk's contract, right? The Warriors are hesitant to pay Jonathan Kuminga because of where it puts them in like the tax thresholds and second apron and everything like that, right? They want to avoid those penalties. If they were to trade and bring in Malik Monk, they would pay him $18.7 million this coming season, but then $20.1 million the following season, and the final year of his deal is a $21.5 million player option, which I would be shocked if Malik doesn't exercise. I don't know if he's ever going to get $21.5 million on the open market in the NBA ever again. So the Warriors are not just looking at Malik, and I do think Malik Monk could absolutely help the Warriors and make them better. The Warriors are looking at that contract and are seeming to balk a little bit at that contract. So again, all indication that I have heard is that the Golden State Warriors are not interested in Malik Monk as part of a sign and trade for Jonathan Kuminga. Here was what I reported earlier today. Put it out on social media at MattGeorgeSac on Twitter if you want to follow me there. The Sacramento Kings are content with bringing their current roster as constructed. That includes the expected Dennis Schroeder deal with the Detroit Pistons that all indications still point to it being a sign and trade, although I don't believe Malik Monk, it doesn't sound like at all Malik Monk will be a part of that sign and trade. It'll be more of a cap space sign and trade move. That includes the Jonas Valanciunas trade to the Denver Nuggets, which widely reported as it's going to happen. I can confirm that. I've also heard that trade is still going to go through, even though Valanciunas is considering moving on to Greece. It sounds like the Nuggets are going to do their best to convince him to stay and be the backup for Nikola Jokic in Denver. That includes, of course, Dario Saric, who was acquired in that deal, Drew Eubanks. So all those moves with this roster kind of as constructed, including Malik Monk and Devin Carter, the Kings are content bringing that roster into training camp and into next season if the Golden State Warriors are not willing to trade Jonathan Kuminga. Essentially, the Kings are okay not getting him. The Kings they will be fine. They're still very interested, of course, in acquiring him, but they are not in any kind of way desperate to acquire him. Now, my report, I want to clarify this too. My report doesn't mean that the Sacramento Kings, if they don't land Kuminga, that they're done making moves, the summer's over, and we can just twiddle our thumbs through Summer League and everything until the start of next season. There's still plenty of time for the Kings to make other moves, whether it's trades or in free agency, even though as of now, the Kings have very, very limited cap space under the luxury tax in free agency, so they don't have a lot of wiggle room in that sense. They absolutely could still make other trades, but there's not a lot out there for what the Kings are willing to give up. So that is what I put out there. That is what I heard in regards to this Jonathan Kuminga sweepstakes. Now to dive into what the title of this episode is all about and what a lot of people took and ran with on social media when I put it out there this morning. The Kings and general manager Scott Perry are willing to walk away from the Kuminga sweepstakes. There is a power in negotiating to being willing to walk away, right? To make sure the other side knows that you don't need this to go through. You would like it, but you don't need it. That's where the Sacramento Kings are with Jonathan Kuminga. They have made their offer to the Warriors. I do not blame the Warriors, nor do I blame their fan base for not being too excited by an offer of Devin Carter, Dario Saric, and 2 second-round picks. I don't blame them one bit. But Scott Perry has put himself and the Kings in a position to where even if it does not land him Jonathan Kuminga, he's saying, this is the offer. Go out and find better or bring him back, pay him, and figure it out yourselves and be a second apron team and potentially lose Kuminga in unrestricted free agency next summer. Hey, we don't get a deal done this summer. If we still like him, we'll revisit this down the road where we don't have to give you anything to go out and get him. That's the position that the Sacramento Kings are in. Now, again, that does not necessarily put them in a power position to land Kuminga, but it puts them in a spot where Perry can confidently, again, walk away and doesn't have to bend to the whims and the will of the Golden State Warriors, right? Of course, the Warriors will want better, but the Sacramento Kings are also operating with the understanding that the Warriors don't really want Kuminga there. That Warriors head coach Steve Kerr has struggled to find how Jonathan Kuminga can impact that team right now. And you best believe they're in a win now window because they're trying to maximize the years that Steph Curry has left in his career. The Kings are aware of this just like everybody else in the league is aware of this. So I ask you this question. I hope Warrior fans are listening. And I don't ask this condescendingly because, look, this is the Kings side talking to the Warriors side. Which organization has had a tremendous amount of success and which organization hasn't in the past decade and some change, right? So I'm not being condescending. I'm not talking down to you. This is just the reality of the situation. Why would the Kings, in their right mind, ever include more in it than they have to or overpay in any kind of way for a player, or for the right to pay a player that the Golden State Warriors themselves are hesitant to pay and don't even really see the fit in their own system? Why would the Sacramento Kings do that when they don't have to? And if your answer is, well, then fine, you don't get Jonathan Kuminga, okay. That's where the Sacramento Kings are willing to walk away. I've seen this saying, Warriors hold all the cards. Warriors hold all the cards. That's true, they do. They get the final say on what happens with Kuminga. They have control. But holding all the cards only matters if you can actually play a winning hand. And right now, they've got a losing hand with Jonathan Kuminga because they can issue him the qualifying offer and he's most certainly gone next year for nothing. They don't want to pay him the money that he's seeking. Well, let's put it this way. Nobody is going to pay Kuminga the money that he's seeking, but the Warriors don't want to pay even a compromise on the money that he's seeking. So the Sacramento Kings know this and know, okay, well, here's your option to get off of it. Here's your option to not have to pay the guy to stay under the apron. Here's our first round pick from last season, plus a couple second rounders. Take it or leave it or go find something better. I know the Washington Wizards were reportedly knocking on the door. Well, that might be done now that they went after Cam Whitmore. Perry has no problem looking at the Warriors situation and going, this is what it is. Maybe we can sweeten it a tiny bit, although I feel pretty confident in saying the Kings would not sweeten it by very much at all. Go out and find better. If you can, good for you. If you say no to our offer because you don't want to trade your NorCal rival, the young player with still a significant amount of upside, you don't want to help them out, you don't want to have to face Kuminga 4 times a year, okay, don't do it then. And worry about the mess that you've been in for a while. Figure out how to keep him happy or what to do with him or what to pay him or how not to lose him for nothing next summer. The Kings are totally okay with that. And I've been going back and forth with and arguing with Warrior fans. And again, Warrior fans, just like Sacramento Kings fans do, we overvalue our talent. It's natural. So I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. I'm just imploring you to think of the other perspective. Think of the other side. Because I know why Keegan Murray's name is coming up. I know that Keegan Murray would be an ideal player for the Golden State Warriors. I know that Keegan Murray would fit in their system far better than Jonathan Kuminga does. Of course I know that. The Kings know that too. So again, I ask you, why in the world would the Sacramento, and by the way, I'll say it for the millionth time, Keegan Murray is not a part of these conversations. He's not. Why in the world would the Kings double help the Golden State Warriors by giving them a player that fits them better while also helping them stay under that second apron? Why would the Kings do that? There's no reason to. There's no leverage for the Warriors in that conversation. And now your response to me, because I've seen this on Twitter a lot, might be, well, Jonathan Kuminga is a better player than Keegan Murray. So you're still getting the better player in the deal. The problem is for Jonathan Kuminga, we still need this kind of value for Kuminga because he's still a really good piece. He's still a really good player. He just doesn't fit in our system. That's why we're trying to get rid of him. Whose problem is that? That's not the Kings' problem or any problem of the other 28 teams in the league. That's your problem that you have to fix. Your organization has to fix, not the Sacramento Kings. And yes, your organization's circumstance impacts player value. It doesn't matter how good of a piece Jonathan Kuminga is. He is not working out for you in Golden State. You do not want to pay him in Golden State. So you are not going to get anywhere close to peak value for him when every team in the league, including, yes, the Sacramento Kings, know that you're more than willing to move on and you're looking to move on. So the Kings are never going to give you what value you think Jonathan Kuminga has, regardless of where he was selected in the draft or how much upside he has. It is not the obligation of the Sacramento Kings or any other team in the league to give you the value that you're seeking for a player that is talented but doesn't work for your system. Right? You're not owed anything. The Warriors are not obligated to get appropriate value or close to appropriate value. Do you think the Kings are lowballing you? Do the Warriors probably feel like the Kings are lowballing them with this offer? Yeah, they probably do. I kind of laughed. I chuckled when I heard the offer, when the offer was told to me for the first time, and when I heard it again, and then again, enough times for me to run with it and report it and put it out there. I laughed. So I don't blame Warrior fans or even the Warriors organization for feeling that way. But again, Scott Perry is in a position where you don't have to call it power. It's not holding the cards, but Scott Perry's in a position where he said, this is what it is. Take it or leave it. And if you don't want to trade Jonathan Kuminga to us, that's fine. We'll go into next season with the roster as is. Next season is kind of a wash anyway. And I would argue, even if Jonathan Kuminga was traded for the Sacramento Kings, whether it was for Malik Monk or Devin Carter and Sarge or whatever the package worked out, I would argue that while the Kings have another exciting wing to put next to Keegan Murray and a young player with upside to build around for the future, I don't think Jonathan Kuminga would suddenly make the Sacramento Kings a playoff team in the Western Conference next season. So no matter what for the Kings, they feel like time is kind of on their side. Might suck for Kings fans who are not looking forward to watching another season of the Kings just being mid. And honestly, that's what the Golden State Warriors are too. Those are two mid teams in the Western Conference just waving their fists at each other. That's what these negotiations are, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. But they're fun. They're entertaining. Warriors fans, you want to say, we have the power, we hold the cards, good for you. You're trying to play with someone on the other end of the table that's kicking their feet up going, I don't have to play if I don't want to. That's the position the Kings are at. And if it costs them Kuminga, okay, fine. Those are the circumstances. That's my read on the situation. Plus, I shared with you what I heard and what I reported earlier today. Again, you want to weigh in, share your thoughts on what you would give up for Kuminga, what the Kings are offering Kuminga. Kings fans, you want to say what more you would be willing to give for Kuminga, or are you okay with Scott Perry kind of playing hardball in this way? I think this is great from the Kings GM. I'm not going to lie to you. You want to weigh in? Do so at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Again, this is just a mini episode of Locked on Kings, just a one segment. Just wanted to air this all out there, get this out there. So we're doing things a little differently. Before we wrap up the podcast, I want to remind you that today's episode, this mini episode, was brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actively drop as it gets closer and closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endlessly scrolling for tickets in your price range or in the right area, you don't have to worry about that because Game Time Zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. And if you're wondering what your view is going to look like, especially for those massive stadium concerts, right? You're going to see Coldplay or Taylor Swift or an act like that, you will know exactly what your seat view looks like to a T with Game Time. It's more accurate than you'll find anywhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets and even sports tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Shout out to Game Time and shout out to you for joining me on this mini episode of Locked on Kings. Of course, if I hear more about Jonathan Kuminga, I will share that with you. Summer League right around the corner. The Cali Classic is starting here shortly. Of course, the Kings are not participating in it. It's boring, it's lame, it's dumb. But next week, Thursday, the 10th, I think it's Thursday, we will get to see Neat Clifford and Maxine Reynaud in action for the first time in Las Vegas. Very much looking forward to that. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked on Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked on Kings podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network.